On this edition of 1+1, the long, deadly road to banning cluster munitions. TV chef and traveller Rick Stein on the binding power of food and sex in the city with an Indigenous twist. Hello, I'm Jane Hutchin. Welcome to the program. After documenting the horrors of war, photojournalist John Rodsted became so distraught by the death and maiming caused by landmines, he became an international campaigner. He was part of the team that won a Nobel Peace Prize for its work against landmines in 1997. More recently, he's turned his attention to the international ban on cluster munitions. These are explosives that have caused untold civilian death and injury, both during war and well after conflicts are over. Since the Convention against their use became legally binding last August, it's been signed by more than 100 countries. About half that number still haven't ratified it, and Australia is one of those. John Rodsted is speaking with Kerry Ritchie.
John Rodsted, welcome to 1+1.
Thanks for having us.
You've got a very impressive and diverse CV. I mean, skydive instructor, photojournalist and Antarctic tour guide. But we're here to talk about your involvement in being an advocate against cluster munitions. Can you tell me how you first got involved in that?
I started doing freelance photojournalist work in Southeast Asia in the late 80s and up until now. And the thing that struck me of all the stuff that you see and record, and it's basically a lot of it's about human misery, the thing that really caught me was the legacy that was left over by certain weapon systems. And landmines and cluster bombs, by their very nature, create a dangerous legacy that condemn people to a horrible life forever.
So how is a cluster bomb different to a landmine?
A landmine is set in the ground to blow somebody up who walks on it. Cluster bombs, you might have, say, 600 inside a big bomb casing, opens up in flight, they fall down over an area covering about 2 football fields. And you can get 20 to 40% of these will fail to explode. Now, it's not that they're broken, they just got hung up somewhere in their detonation process. So they're hung. And they will lay about, they might be stuck in the trees, they might be embedded themselves in the ground, they might be on the ground, they might be on the roofs of buildings, might have found their way inside buildings. And they will be in a dangerous situation. Someone finds them, they go, oh, it's a ball. Pick it up, bang, you blow off your face, you blow off your hands, you kill yourself or you're horribly maimed.
So Australia has never ever used them, and we don't use them now, but which countries are using them? The US?
The biggest user historically and up to the present day of cluster munitions has been the United States. It's become very much a weapon of choice since World War II. They were used heavily in Korea, massively during the Vietnam War, particularly over the Ho Chi Minh Trail running down through Laos and Cambodia. They were used by Israel in 2006 in southern Lebanon. They were used by both the Georgians and the Russians in Georgia in 2008. NATO used them, the British and the Americans used them in Kosovo in 1999.
Who's using them now?
Right now no one's using them. Everyone's holding their breath that they don't get used in Libya. Gaddafi's got them and NATO's got them.
Pretty much would have to be the most dangerous job on earth, wouldn't it?
There's worse things to do than what I do. I mean, I choose to work the way that I do. I choose to go into these places and I have a choice to leave, and the people who get stuck with it have no choice. You know, you leave your home, you become a refugee, and we don't want any refugees around here now, do we? We'd rather leave them in a situation where they're stuck in their dangerous world, which is, to me, completely appalling. The treaty was created in 2008 that brings about a very succinct ban on this weapon system, and now we've got 106 countries signed up to it, and over 50 ratified.
What's the significance of that treaty? What will it mean?
The treaty is really extraordinary because in some ways it's a little bit of a carbon copy of the Landmines Treaty. Now, to start with, the Landmines Treaty was created outside of the United Nations. You know, the problem with the UN as an organisation is it works on consensus. Everybody needs to agree, which means nothing ever gets done there. It's a great place to have a meeting, but don't expect any real substantive work to come out of it. The Landmine Treaty was sponsored by the Canadian government. They put their hand up and said, let's all get outside the UN system, negotiate a strong treaty first, and then see who wants to sign up. If you don't like it, don't come. But you can't scuttle it for everybody else.
Well, how would you rate Australia's handling of all of this?
I think the Australian government's been handling it very poorly, and I don't think there's been much in the way of transparency. That they did their best to get weak legislation created, or a weak text created for the treaty, which was fought out, and they didn't get what they wanted, I believe. In the process of ratification, it's been very slow. That the treaty was created in the end of 2008. Well, now we're in 2011. It's still not ratified yet, and the text that they have on offer at the moment from the Attorney General's Department is, quite frankly, so full of loopholes, it won't tie them to anything. You
were part of a team that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1997. Tell me about that.
And at the end of 1997, the treaty creating a ban on that weapon system was signed in Ottawa. I was there at that signing. It really was an amazingly emotional moment, that we'd been on this incredibly out-of-control roller coaster, and I'd been in and out of wars for the last few years, basically either in places of conflict or in the UN or into these international meetings pushing the point. And all of a sudden, it's like you stopped and you took a breath. And there's this big ceremony, and out comes this thing, and Lloyd Axworthy puts the first name on paper, and I thought, God, we've pulled it off. We've actually got a treaty created that brings about the start of the end of this system.
How does an Australian man get involved in this? I guess, I mean, the lifestyle, it's got to be very taxing on your family life and moving around all the time. I'm guessing you don't spend much time at home, do you?
No, not enough at all. The older you get, the harder it gets too. That I'm very lucky. I'm in a fabulous relationship with a very special person who came out of the same world that I came out of. So she'd done as much work in conflicts as I had in worst case scenarios. She was in Afghanistan for many, many years. So there's a